Hello and good morning. Okay, here we go. Hello and good morning, everybody, and welcome to this year's Polyglot Gathering, which I think none of us believed it would happen, but it does happen online. So we have to live with what we have, and it's a bizarre situation for all of us. And first of all, I'd like to thank the Polyglot team, Peter, Lydia, Elisa, Dorota, Cesco, wonderful Marta. You're all great, staging this, not shutting down and staging this all together. We owe you a big, big, big compliment and kisses and hugs. And we hope to kiss and hug you next year in Poland or in Bratislava or wherever. I think everybody online really, really appreciates that. And Bratislava, oh my God, I never thought I'm going to say this, but that strange university somewhere in the forest on the outskirts of Bratislava, that strange food we've been served, the technical conditions which were very, very shy, to say the least, all of that we didn't like. And now I can say that I miss it. I really miss that tacky university in the forest of Bratislava. I even miss the toilets. I even miss these ladies serving in the cafeteria, which were very, very basic in customer service. I miss all of that. So I think everybody, all of you agree that when I say, we hope that we will be back live soon, even in Bratislava, even in that university. Joking aside, on Bratislava, this is the Polyglot Gathering this year, and I think all the speakers are very happy to have given the chance still to talk to everybody. It's a great, great effort, as I say, and I can't thank enough to all the organizers. And by the way, you're missing out. You're missing out a lecture that would have been much better than this one. And this was the workshop that Marta Melnik and I have prepared. It's on Bollywood. It was on Bollywood songs and Hindi language or Indian languages combined with Bollywood dancing and singing. And we would have been singing and dancing on stage. We were thinking of doing it here, but I think that has to be live. So you have to go with this lecture. I'm terribly sorry, but you can see probably Marta and me on another occasion, Bollywood dancing the next time. And I also would like to spend a couple of seconds on asking you to support your local language schools if you have any in your neighborhood. Everybody's been hit hard by the economy these days with COVID-19. And, maybe we forget the language people, and many of you are language teachers. So if you have a language school at the end of your street or somewhere tucked away in the neighborhood, it's a good time to offer a voucher to your mom or to your dad or to your relatives. Go and brush up their English, brush up their French, go and brush up your Russian. Try to support your local language schools. Many, many times those people are entrepreneurs. They're not startup entrepreneurs. They're not those hipsters. Many of them have a rough time keeping up their business now. So please support your local language school. And there we are. We talk about business. So as you can see, my lecture is called Do You Speak Business? I decided this year to share my experiences with you, to see how languages influence business life, but that's business language, so we won't be talking about that. I would like to share my experiences on how you can use languages, your languages, within your career planning, within your career steps, and also with it looking back at your career. And also I would like to offer that advice. So maybe you have made all those decisions in your life already. You're like me, advanced age, but you have your kids, and you'd like to set the path for them correctly. So this is what it's all about, or somebody in your family or however. So as you can see, I named it how languages can impact your career or how they can destroy it. I don't think a language can destroy your career, but it can go sometimes terribly wrong. It can go wrong in the sense that, you choose sometimes the wrong language to communicate or even to learn. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. So who am I? You all know me. My name is Alexander Medjedovic. I've had many lectures at the gathering live. You probably know me by now, no introduction necessary. I'm an economist. I worked in a couple of countries so far, and I've also had a trail from those countries out to other countries. So I've been living in the last 20 years in Turkey. My parents are from ex-Yugoslavia, and I'm a German national born in Germany. And by the way, I owe a big portion of my small wealth to Germany, because I was born in Hanover, and Hanover, it's also where I am right now this morning, Hanover is the cleanest German. So we're at advice number one, or point number one. If you learn a language, try to learn the how can I say, the clean version, or try to learn the Hoch version, the high German, the high, the clean French, and not to pick up an accent from the beginning. You can have an accent in your talking while you're developing the language, but for clean business purposes, it's always good to have the high German. So I was gifted. My parents gave me to a very good school, and I learned high German in Hanover. And that I've been using all my life, and that helped me all my life. I lived in Turkey, I lived in France, in America. I've been a lot to Asia and the Middle East, and I've been exposed to different languages. But I have to say, most of it was for business. In private, as much as I like all my languages, in private, I kind of like to stick to my main ones, which is German, English, and French. So for me, there's always been a distinction between private and professional. Why I offered this lecture? It's very, very simple. I will be 50 this summer, and I will be forgiven most of my mistakes that I've made, or I can't make too many more in the time to come. I can reflect back. Life always looks better in spring. When you look back on the winter, you always feel better in springtime or in the summertime. I can reflect back, and I can see what I've done wrong or right, or in the middle of the road. I look back on an incredible and uncontrolled wealth of experience. And this is only because of the languages that I speak, nothing else. Not the university degrees that I have, not the, whatever else I have inside me. It's the languages that opened my doors. I don't get tired of saying that. So I owe a lot to languages, and I'd like to share that experience. And also, again, most of my personal and professional successes and failures happened because of my language abilities. I got myself into trouble a lot of times because of the language, however I used it in that situation, but also I gained a lot of respect with the languages. So we all have a dream. We all have a dream. We would like to work at our own pace and learn plenty of languages in the 3 hours that we have. We would like to be paid for that. We'd like to travel and learn languages while traveling. We'd like to spend preferably a year in that country where the language is from, and learning it while enjoying life. And we'd like to attend polyglot gatherings and other relevant conferences displaying the languages skills. And, we'd like to retire at 45, learning more and more languages. We all know that won't happen. We all know that this is a dream, and the reality is far away from it. Still, you can build in your languages in your life, in your career. I'd like to give 3 examples from my career trail. English. I started learning English because my parents owned a business, and I could practice it there. I had to practice it there because they didn't know any English. They knew German and Russian, and that was a restaurant. They were restaurant owners, so I could converse with the guests. That was the only reason I tried to get interested into English. So if you have kids, it's important to introduce kids also to your business life, if you would like to, and to make them see how languages work. I aim to improve it also because of work, because I could, that I could get another work somewhere else. When you're not happy with your job, you're trying to find a way out, and my way out was the languages. And the only reason why I nowadays, with knowing more than 10 languages and having lived in so many countries that don't use English, why I pay attention that English doesn't deteriorate, because it can happen easily if you don't use it in the right manner. And in the Middle East, sometimes you have very strange offsprings of English. Then I pay attention because I want to give my retirement speech in proper English, in correct and grammatically correct English, and not in what we call Tarzan English. So lots of motivations from the business. I'd like to give an example about French. Now, French, I refused to learn French because I had a student exchange in my old days, in my young days in Rouen. And I've seen how people live there and work there, and that daily working routine of the teachers where we were living didn't appeal to me. And I blocked and refused to learn French because of that, because I didn't want to live like them. It's very funny, but I knew it was like that. Then, funnily enough, I ended up in France, living and working there, university and also work. And I drastically improved my French because I wanted to be able to tell off colleagues that I don't like. And everybody dealing, with French people, how charming they can be. Sorry for my stereotypes, but if you can respond to them nicely in a good manner and in their language, that helps a lot. And the result is I speak French like a mother tongue, and still today I get flashed, I get red, and I completely get flattered if somebody tells me that he or she thought that I'm French. So again, it was purely through work. Private life, almost zero impact. Interesting other example is Turkish. Now, I got the best job of my life because I promised my boss when he hired me at that time, he told me, you're not the ideal candidate. We need somebody in Turkey who speaks Turkish, but we like you, so here's the job, learn Turkish. That is rare, as we know. And that's that's a really great chance, but also great challenge. So he basically said to me, learn Turkish. So I did. And when I look back on these 20 years, actually the one and only reason I was successful in my job is I knew Turkish. I learned it and I knew it. If I wouldn't have known, I don't know the impact that I would have left on that job. It just simply was all centered on contact with the customers and talking to them in their own language. And the only reason why I'm still alive from many situations and why I will always have a job in that country is because I speak Turkish. So I have almost a guarantee that I can go back anytime and some sort of job would fall into my lap, or I would fall into their lap because I know the language. So those were examples, and you can see, how you can use it for your career path. Now, you have decisions to learn languages. Sometimes you have to make them. I'm going back again, when somebody else decides for you, your parents decided for you in the first years which languages you're going to learn. Now you will decide for your children, maybe. English, English, English. I mean, that is undisputable. English, I don't know if Chesko is online, he won't like it, but English is the main business language, and it won't change. We can say that Mandarin will take over, or Arabic or whatever, but English will remain for many, many centuries the main language. So make sure, if you guide somebody, make sure he or she learns proper English, not Tarzan English, proper English. Then also orientate yourself to the best teacher or best school or best time to learn that language for business, because not all times, not all occasions, not all teachers are the same. Sometimes you have to go by that. I did like that a few times, and it was a good decision. And then do a reality check, and if you want to do something good to your kids, I mean, let's be honest, let's face it. If you want to lay a good foundation for your kids to take a good job, have them learn Chinese, Mandarin, Arabic, Japanese, Russian, and maybe Spanish and Hindi. Now, imagine that conversation, in the playground, two mothers meeting, their kids are 8 years old, and said, what is your son doing in the afternoon? Mine is going to play basketball. And you give an answer, oh, mine is learning Arabic. Depending on where you are in which part of the world, that's going to be a odd situation, explaining it to another parent why you send your 8-year-old kid learning Arabic. It's an exaggerated example, but you get the point. If you really want to do something good, that's the way to go, because those languages will be important later on and guarantee your kid a job. And when you decide for yourself, again, English, English, English, make sure you speak proper English, because that sets the way for everything else. Be honest to yourself. There are things that you can do. There are things that you can't. If you don't have an access to a language or to a good teacher, sometimes it's, maybe good to give up. If it's for work, if you're purely picking up languages for work, there is a great person among us. I hope she's online. It's Elisabeth Dörrer. She has been giving lectures at the Polyglot Gathering for the last few years. She's a simultaneous interpreter at the European Commission in Brussels. A dear person, a dear friend, and I love her so much, and everybody else does from the Polyglot Gathering. She's been giving great lectures, and one of her lectures was simultaneous translation is only a tool. She sees it as a tool, nothing else. It's not her vocation. It's something that she has in her hand, like a pen, and she's working with it. And she's very right on that. And she told us how she picked up Slovak and other languages as tools to work at the European Commission. Now, that's a very strange way of seeing it, but I found it so picturing and so right that it really influenced me the way I see languages. It's really good to see it as a tool. Sometimes you use the tool well, sometimes you don't, but at the end of the day, it's your tool, and you have it with you all the time. And sometimes you have a force majeure. Sometimes you cannot choose the language you're going to learn. That happened to me. I didn't choose Turkish. It just happened like this. There were 2 other languages after that I also didn't choose, but they just happened. So sometimes you need to let yourself go with the flow. So decision making is that. Now there was something in my intro. It's not an easy slide to understand. It's the Lego house. There is never the language alone. The language never walks alone. You always, for business, mix languages and skills. You construct your house of cards. I can only say from my own experience, don't be afraid of mixing, of adding. It all doesn't have to be at the same level. I started learning Arabic when Turkish was kind of constructed. Didn't really help. I wasn't successful in Arabic to the point that I was in the other languages, but it's good to have that perspective. Also, you have to have different perspective on the languages. I give another example on the Turkish. I knew that my Turkish is always going to be that of a salesperson, of somebody selling something. You're supplying something. So I knew that I need to pick up more communicative, more aggressive language skills rather than being a poet, having poetry of Nazim Hikmet and of Orhan Pamuk. And I didn't focus on that. So learning languages for business, building them into a business practice, it's really, really important from which perspective you're going to be using that language. If you already know the language, then try to see from which perspective you can improve. Maybe your sales French or your sales German is not up to date, but you're going to be in a sales position. So it's good to work on that point. And my turning point, again, putting the Lego house, the house of cards together, my turning point was at 30. Ground zero. I wanted a new language. I wanted something totally new. I wanted deliberately to live in a country with a language I don't speak. I was hungry. I was literally wanting to take revenge on all the lifestyles that I had before. I was vain. I wanted to be something good. I wanted to be a star in the job with a new language. And the most important, I had an open mind. And then I was looking for jobs in China or South America. And Turkey came to my mind. And I never thought I'm going to be spending 20 years in Turkey, but I did. So you have different stages at which to learn the languages. And I thought that was a kind of fun comparison to do. So when you're 15, if this is for business purposes, when you're 15, you learn the language to make more pocket money than others. I made much more pocket money translating at conferences and fairs already with 15 and 16 years old in English than many of my friends. When you're 20, you try to add languages because you want to find excuses to be away from home. You can say, hey, mom, I speak Spanish. Why can't I go attend university in Spain or in South America or whatever? With 25, you're young, you still don't have your CV completed. You might want to add another language for business to pimp up your value, to be more valuable. With 30, that was my case. You can decide to learn a new language to have a new job, your best job. With 30, usually you get the good job of your life, maybe the best. With 40, if you add another language for business, it could mean that you want to have a change in your life, in your career, that you want to go something totally different. And then could be the time, and it's a good time still to add another language. When you're 50, I am now, I can pretend now that I learn another language, Arabic or Japanese or something. I'm not sure if it's going to work out. Could be, could not be. Yeah, that's another story. And if you're 60, forgive me the irony. You learn a new language to find a new wife or a new husband. You move to another country and say, let's mingle with the locals. So with this humoristic view, we get to something really, really serious, and that's the HR departments. Now, those HR departments are the centers of mystery, and I have interviewed 6 friends. You're not going to get the names, you're not going to get the companies. I'm going to give you anonymous information, but they're all HR executives. And the opinions that I get, that really surprised me. For example, get this, HR is typically very evasive when it comes to languages. They don't like putting it in the center. They prefer having it on the sideline. They much more focus on your engineering skills, on your leadership skills or other things. But languages, all of them said, yeah, it's nice to have, but put it on the side first. Then languages are rarely a knockout criteria. You'd be surprised how flexible HR can be on languages. Even if it says necessary skills in a job ad, necessary skills, fluent Danish or fluent Finnish, you'd be surprised how people would compromise in many situations. In some situations, of course, it's mandatory. Testing the tester, you'd be surprised how rarely you would get tested on the languages in the professional HR interview. I'll come to that later. Languages became non-scalable. They're becoming hard to compare because everything, has become public on the internet, on YouTube. People can pretend they speak languages and they really don't because they're reading from a teleprompter. So, the credibility of knowing a language is much more challenged these days. And of course, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Even if you hire somebody who speaks perfect Finnish, it's no guarantee that he's going to function in Finland once he's there. And, I asked the managers, 3 are from Big 5 headhunters, again, no names. One is from a boutique headhunter in Germany, from a small headhunter. One is a freelancer in Turkey that is dealing with HR issues, and one is an HR lead at an NGO. None of the ones I work for, a completely different one. But that kind of gives. I did a mini survey with them, and it's just opinion searching, fishing for opinion. Look at this. I did a quick survey. I asked them, which CV do you prefer? Do you prefer the CV listing all languages beyond beer ordering skills and details and levels? Beginner skills in Swahili and light beginner skills in Portuguese. And only one of them said, I want all of that. 4 of them said, don't bore me with this, giving a choice of fluent and good ones and make it scalable. And one said, don't give me anything. I just want to know what you know really fluent and what you can use in business. I found that quite interesting. Then, do you test languages beyond the first foreign language in an interview for an executive position, for a top-level executive position, meaning CEO or CFO of a company, of a country office? 5 said, no, never. They don't test languages. They just assume that when the person wrote fluent, it's going to come out sooner or later. It's very, very interesting. Then B, only if it's apparent that the skills are out of line. For example, a blonde German guy stating to speak Urdu at native level. He's obviously not Pakistani. How the hell did he learn Urdu? So let's take a look. Let's somehow find a way, particularly if it's related to Pakistan, the job. And that answer gave only one of them. 3 others said also we might do that because it looks suspicious. And all 6 of them said, if I happen to know Croatian and the guy states that he speaks Croatian, I might challenge him or her just for fun, just to see, to embarrass him if he doesn't speak it or just to see it. But obviously, they rely very much on information given in the CV, and that's going to be important in a few slides later. Also, is language a knockout? Is a complete knockout? We're looking for a beer brewing engineer. That's a German Braumeister, I didn't know another word, to run a brewery in Mongolia, fluent in Mongolian. Nobody suitable applies, only one or the other, on either an engineer or a Mongolian. Which one do you give preference? The brewmaster, the language master, or nobody? Keep searching until you get lucky. All of them said, go for the skill, go for the brewmaster. We're going to sort out the language skill. It's very rare that you cannot sort it out. Find a secretary, find an assistant, find a translator, but the professional skills are much more important. That was very, very surprising to me. All of them said the same. And the last one, you get a good applicant CV, very suitable for the opening you have, stating that he or she speaks 14 languages, 3 native, 8 fluent, 3 strong working knowledge. Do you get suspicious? Or all power to him or her, or could not care less about the languages? All 5 of my friends said, yes, it smells trouble. So this is funny, you state all the languages, the great languages that you learned and speak, and some people might have 3 native languages, and the HR person says, I don't believe him. That's somehow strange. But anyway, that's the way it is. That's the way they answered. So the conclusions from HR, what really I can get as a summary from that. Unfortunately for us polyglots, it seems that the technical skills, the job skills, are in the foreground, and then the language skills. Of course, that's not valid for translators because that's your job skill. But engineering, biology, medical, you'd be surprised how many doctors can get jobs in countries where they don't speak the language. I'm always surprised. Then it's very rare to get recognition for hard languages. You studied hard to learn Vietnamese, and you put it on your CV in very prominent position, and nobody cares. That can happen. That happens many times. So be aware of that. Polyglots are underdogs. We are rarely recognized as what we are: great people, great communicators, ingenious people that worked hard to get their language. It's very hard to get recognition for that. And if you put in polyglot in the hobby section, you'd have maybe people laughing at you. What is a polyglot? Tough luck. And too many languages raise suspicion. I can't get over that. I really can't get over that. And I questioned them, why do you see it like that? They couldn't give me an answer. They just said it's a gut feeling that, that it's like that. I said, okay, tough luck. So the CV. Now this is the last part of my talk. The CV is the preferred tool for self-destruction. In all my almost 30 years of career, I have always been involved in HR issues. I always looked at CVs and hired people in 8 different countries. So you can trust me, I do have a wealth of experience. Now, I can only tell you, when you do your homework, when you do your CV, do your damn homework. Switch on your brain. Know what you do. I'll show you examples now. Be honest, but be self-confident. You have to show out your skills, but don't exaggerate on your language skills. Don't make them up. It's going to come back to you, even if they don't test, even if they don't care. Rest assured, it's going to come back. And less is more. I'll show you why, but exceptions are proving the rule. There can be cases where many languages have a good effect. I'm going to show you a couple of examples of my friends' CVs, and you're going to have a good laugh. So this is a lovely girl from Romania. Obviously, where are the languages? Okay, personal skills, professional, yep. Okay, language competencies, knowledge of Romanian mother tongue. Horrible formulation. Don't. It's a no-go. Just don't do it. This has to look nicer and structured. Believe me, this is no good. This one, okay, you got to search for the languages, and they're hidden between a bar exam and literacy in Microsoft Office. Okay, English and German fluent, fair enough. It's great to have English and German fluency, but don't do it like that. This is also no good. Tucked away between some other skills. Languages deserve their own section. Okay, this is in German, but you'll get the point. We've got a great person here. He speaks German, Serbo-Croatian, Albanian, French, English, but he puts it in a section, with language, computer, and other qualifications, and doesn't make a distinction between office and the driver's license and great languages that he speaks. Terribly wrong. Not good at all. Don't do it like this. This is great. This is a screenshot. It's in the personal details. It's like your address and your nationality and your passport and your marriage status. By the way, marriage status isn't, for me, a complete no-go for a CV, but that's another point. So somewhere tucked away, this person speaks Arabic, one of the top languages to get good jobs, and he just tucks it away between his address and his date of birth. Also, don't do that. This is slightly better, but here we have a girl who speaks Slovak, English, Czech, German. It's great languages. She has great computer skills, but you've got to do it a little bit different. This is not bad already. It's quite good, but you've got to wrap it a little bit differently. This is the worst of all I've seen. I mean, I'm sorry. No, it's not. This is the quite good. It's quite good. There is somebody who is a little bit lost in his Sardinian native language. I wouldn't put it as a second. I would make a kind of, he's got great other skills, Japanese. So I would make a little bit of a choice between a personal language, which quite obviously Sardinian is for this person. Make a slightly different order. This is no go. This is full of mistakes. I mean, this is mixing Turkish and Turkish writing of countries and giving wrong commas and everything. And if you see this in a CV, if you know, and again, you know, and French, she speaks French. They don't, you know, fluent in 3 European major world languages. You know, don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. The presentation is going to be available for everybody, so you can, you know, you can take a look. And finally, this is how I would do it. This is giving you, you know, and it's also a lot about context. It's also a lot about giving context. It's not only listing the languages very cleanly and clearly. You're working with working terms that people can relate to. You have, for example, Italian and Russian. You can have good working knowledge or very good working knowledge. That gives something to your prospective employer. That gives him or her the idea of how you can operate. And of course, it needs to be correct. And of course, it's embedded in a very international CV. You need to work with different country names, city names. You have international in your CV. So be international and language international from the beginning and make it in a good concept. And then here it's very, very clear what the Slovenian gentleman knows and what he can do. If you have questions on the CV, you can ask them to me, or also later on, just drop me a mail. I have a long experience in building CVs for HR reasons, including the languages. And the final is, you know, where do languages matter? That's my opinion. You might challenge it. You might tell it rubbish. It's completely wrong. I'm perfectly happy with that. But for my opinion, languages at CEO or executive level, if it's about international recruitment, if it's about placing top people, rarely matters. Chances are that the CEO of a huge company in Russia, it could be a non-Russian speaker. He has other skills, you know, she has other advantages, could be exceptions, but I would say no, but maybe. When you climb through corporate structures, yes, there it matters a lot. You know, if there's a choice of between 2 vice presidents, senior VPs, who's going to be the deputy, then they all often look at the skills, you know, that will distinguish one candidate from another. So if you are pushing yourself through a corporate structure, languages do matter a lot. In sales and marketing, I've said it already before, they matter a lot. Anywhere you have to communicate, you just got to make sure you speak that language properly and well, and to the last point. In entrepreneurship, in startup, in innovation, I would say no, because the startup world has their own language, you know, between scaling and seed investment and grassroots and startup and boot camp and all of that. It's great to have, and it's a very international environment, but it's not the essence of it. In public sector, it makes a huge difference. It makes a really big difference. For example, if you're working for a government, even if you're Slovak, you know, working in the Czech Republic, it would require you to speak perfect Czech. So that there is a non-compromise. In international organizations, NGOs, non-for-profit organizations, European Union, United Nations, you find all of it. You find all of it mixed there. So there is no rule to that part. Diplomacy, I would say yes. A diplomat cannot understand the country where he's posted to if he doesn't speak the language. You'd be surprised how many don't. I'm always shocked. I'm always shocked in my own countries that I'm a citizen of, or in other ones. So speaking a language for a diplomat, for me, is a must, but I'm not the world. And in education, yes, that's a clear yes. If you want to teach somebody a language, or even work in a supporting mechanism of teaching languages, you've got to speak the language where you work. So digitalization, just a very short outlook on that. You know, we called the devil of digitalization for languages is opening up new paths. You know, you can learn languages much more easily. We can participate in such great conferences like the Polyglot Gathering. But, you know, I always see that people pay less attention to mistakes. I wonder what mistakes made during this presentation. So be careful with digital things. Learning and practicing, of course, becomes much more accessible to everybody, and there are many pros and cons for digital formats. So make sure you choose the right digital format, you know, for what you're doing online and digital. And at the end, I have my conclusions, my personal ones. Always use your languages in business. Go out, do it. Don't sit somewhere and say, oh, my French is just really basic. Use it, even a few words. you're gonna win. You're gonna win the, if not, then the hearts of the people. I'll explain in the next one what it is. But also be aware of the context. Be aware of your position. If you do not speak proper Turkish and you're an executive and you're meeting with Turks, maybe, and you're the boss of the company, maybe it's better to give the preference to the person next to you from your office who is Turkish, who can go ahead and you can follow by humbling yourself and saying, I don't speak Turkish so well. I give it to my colleague to explain to you, and then you surprise them with your skills. So this portion of humbleness is really, really good to work with. Language is just one part of the business communication chain. Use the other ones as well. And I wrote something bizarre, only know what I mean. It's my Kulsum effect. Kulsum is a very famous Egyptian folk singer. She's dead for a long, long time. And she's the one, maybe you know her, she's the one being called the queen of Cairo taxi and minibus drivers. When you enter a minibus or a taxi in Cairo, you will hear Kulsum. It's very, very unusual Arabic music with a lot of unusual sounds. And knowing Kulsum, being able to talk about some of her song in Egypt, in Cairo, in public, or in a business conversation, it opens the hearts. So you can't learn Arabic for a meeting or for a week of meetings in Cairo or in Saudi Arabia, but you can pick up some stuff from their culture, and they love it. Believe me, they will. And it's still, the language is still the most important communication. You can talk about Kulsum and other singers, but language is the priceless communication tool. Use it. Polyglots, to my opinion, have a tougher professional life than monolinguists. As I said in some of the examples, you raise sometimes suspicion in work. Sometimes people say, what is it with this guy or with this girl, speaking all these languages? Must be something behind. I don't want to tell you how many times in my life, people raised suspicion that you're a spy or you're working for a secret service or something. It's totally absurd stuff. But people do that. They think, he speaks more than 7 languages. It's got to be a CIA agent or a, Mossad agent or whatever. I don't want to comment on that. And is it worth paying the price? Yes. It's worth paying any price for being able to speak to you here now in English, which is not my mother tongue, and to speak to anybody in any kind of other language than your mother tongue. Priceless and good. So that would be from my side. Thank you for listening. I'll go back to my conclusions page. It's not that red, and I have a lot of questions. Okay, so I think Elisa is gonna read out, is gonna pick a question because there are too many. Or shall I? Okay, I got it. Can including official language certificates lower suspicions with many languages? No, not at the first stage. What is always good, what I always like, if people are prepared when they come for an interview, to bring it in a map, put it discreetly on the desk, when we talk to each other, and from that I can see that he or she is prepared. And obviously, if I'm interested in it, I can ask for the certificate. But upfront, don't do these 20-page attachment applications. I wouldn't do it. It's not going to raise your credibility. When you have languages, when it's required, when it says language certificate required, then of course yes. But I'd be rather careful with that, just from an emotional point of view. Do you advise using fancy German expressions for language levels? Verhandlungssicher, fließend in Wort und Schrift. If you do a German CV, yes, that's CV language in Germany. I grew up with it. I dislike this Beamtendeutsch. It's administrative German. But in German, it's mandatory to classify your language skills. In other languages, it might not exist, might not exist. Always look out for how do they use it in that language or in that country where you're dealing with. But I don't think they're fancy expressions. They're it's language, it's business language from that country. So I would use it if I would be in that country, and if I'm sure that it's good to use them and it's correct to use them, yeah. Is it a good idea to put minority languages in your CV? That's a great language. That's a great question for me. I'll try to answer it unemotionally. but in a way that professionally it gives you value. I'm from ex-Yugoslavia. Now, first of all, some of you have followed my my lecture on Yugoslavian languages. There are 22 languages in ex-Yugoslavia. You know, you want to list all of them? No. Do you want to list the main ones? Then you've got to start thinking. You know, Serbo-Croatian is the official language, but what about Bosnian or Montenegrin? And you're entering in a nightmare. How do I can only say how I do it. I either put Serbo-Croatian, this is the official name of the language, or sometimes we use, in different contexts, we use BCS, Bosnian, Serbian, Croatian, and you can add Montenegrin on it, BCMS. It sounds like a weird adult game, but at the end of the day, it classifies the language. Short answer, you could describe in great detail which African language your grandparents used and were teaching to you. Stay purpose oriented. Stay purpose oriented for the point of making it communicable that the language is part of you. And if you have many of them, if you've lived all across Africa and were educated all across Africa, pick one, maximum two that you would highlight, but don't overdo it. And I would also, it doesn't hurt putting them somewhere in the middle of the CV. With me, they're on top of the CV, but that's me, but weigh it carefully. Would it be better to list your language as advanced, proficient, etc., or use the CFR levels word instead of number? But again, that's me. But most human resources managers work on levels. Also, they have to decide which CVs they put up to the next level, to the CEO or vice president. These B1, C1 are confusing. If you're not a linguist, if you're not dealing with linguistic issues, then it's very hard to know all these things. I would always say, in the first step, advanced, proficient, fluent, native, strong working knowledge. Try to put in the work, the subject of work or business in it, because the person reading it wants to know whether you can work with the language. Strong, proficient doesn't give a relation to work. I'd always try to be work related. Would you listing your language by your level of proficiency or rather by relevance for the position? Both are fine. There is no rule on that. I would always go by level of proficiency. That sounds more professional to me, more business oriented, and it's easy to navigate. If you're applying for a post where the qualification is required Turkish, and your Turkish is your fluent second language after your mother tongue, I would put it there and then put French or Spanish or other ones. Then, of course, it's relevant. But usually in the first row, I would go by a level of proficiency. Is there any reason or benefit to put the dialect accent of the languages you speak on your resume CV, unless it's for strict professional purposes? No. And, even coming back to Serbia and Croatia, they're looking for somebody who speaks Croatian. Your language is Serbian. It's the same. It's the same language. It's very, very overlapping, the language. What are you going to do? You're going to write, I speak Serbian, but I can please Croats? No. Unless, again, it's very, very specifically asked for. With Arabic, yes, for example, with Arabic, it can be an issue to put, I speak Arabic with a Gulf accent. I wouldn't know the job that would ask you to have that. Be careful with this. I wouldn't. I would go with the regular ones. Would you put Esperanto on the CV, or is it a mistake? I really don't know anything about Esperanto. I can't answer that question. I admire you guys all running around in that nice university in Bratislava speaking Esperanto. I couldn't give you an answer. Ask somebody who works with Esperanto, who makes money with Esperanto, and he's going to tell you a better advice. Do you suggest any good website to create your own CV? No, there are thousands. There are really, really thousands. You asked me for recommendations, so I'll say what I prefer. I prefer American sites to European sites. American origin CVs, to my opinion, are a little bit clearer structured, less words, less format. So check out an American site. There are too many. May I answer, Elisa? May I answer one of the questions that I've seen, and that could be the last one? How did you learn Turkish? How did I learn Turkish? Very simply, at work. Only at work. And for the first 4 or 5 years, I struggled, and I really struggled. I learned it in the office. I learned it with the cleaning ladies, with my secretaries, with with anybody around me. Needless to say, it was tough, a very tough ride. And Turkish is a language with many, many accents, more than 50. So, the rough way, never went to a school, never went into a book, simply by business. So my Turkish is business Turkish. Whoever speaks Turkish with me, can easily verify that. When it comes to emotions, I'm not that good in Turkish. That's a lie. That's a joke. But in any case, it was business Turkish on the street, in the office. I wouldn't even say on the street, office Turkish, and that saved my life, and that made me who I am right now. So I have to finish. Thank you all for listening on a sunny Saturday morning at 11 o'clock. I love you all. I love the organizers. Thank you very, very much. Thank you from the bottom of my heart and from everybody for this occasion. And praying that we are meeting again in Poland or Bratislava or wherever next year. Be healthy, stay well, and learn your language. Support your local language school. Bye bye. Do widzenia. Auf Wiedersehen. Au revoir. İyi günler.